So I guess from my perspective, it's you know, I guess back in like 4 or 5 years ago, Research Now launched their geolocation panel, and I think we were, my previous company, one of the first to kind of jump in and try it out. And I just kind of thought this would take off and just go flying, and we'd see tons of these types of studies out there. I mean, it's cool, it's sexy type of, you know, approach. And I guess, where's my clicker? Is it?
Right there on top. It's a skinny thing.
Ah, cool.
And it's the bottom arrow.
So I don't know, I've been kind of surprised the last few years that it hasn't really taken off the way that we maybe thought it was. And I don't know if it's because maybe it just kind of doesn't fit in with some of our tools quite as well, or maybe the expense of this type of technique maybe is just a little more than standard research. But you know, again, I was glad to see them sharing some of their case studies, and here I'm sharing 4 case studies from us where we've actually launched and fielded these types of studies. And I think they're really starting to take on and find their own little niche, and it's an interesting way of conducting research. All right, cool. So they just went through a lot of this type of data, but I think from our perspective, the way we think about data captured in a geofencing on location, real-time location type of research situation, you capture the GPS, depending on the service provider. It might be every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. Basically, you're pinging the phone, getting their location. And then you have the timestamps, so entry, exit, which you can then put into a rough time duration, how long they were on site. And then you can code that, as Saran was saying, against a database, whether it's Foursquare or your own kind of custom database, to be able to say, you know, turn that Latin long into, hey, they were at Target, at Walmart, at CVS. You can also look backwards. So instead of thinking about real time in the moment, with all of our DMPs and kind of future-looking, you know, kind of appends of data appends, you can also think about, hey, I want to see individuals who shopped at Kroger, Walmart, and Target, and do like a battleground type of analysis. So try to find unique individuals and kind of understand why they went to, you know, 3 or 4 different stores in the last 6 months. The way that we think about the actual research, depending on the market, on the panel, on the audience you're going after, you might have to pre-recruit. So in low incidence cases, or if you're in a very focused, tight geography, or in the case of Canada, where there aren't really a lot of panels who have location-based services yet, you might have to pre-recruit, where you go in and go to the panel and ask them to download an app, find people with a certain condition that you might want to target. And then you jump into geo-tracking. So in some cases, you can actually go after the full panel. In the US, a lot of the panels are of decent size where you can just go out and track all of the individuals. You don't always have to pre-recruit. And you're basically tracking their location again every 15 minutes. You get their location, and you can compare that to the fences that are relevant. So they were looking at CVS. We've looked at college campuses, at grocery stores, at restaurants. So there's a lot of different types of data sources like that that you can compare the geolocation information against. And then you ping them a survey. And you can either ping them a survey on site, so when they first trip the fence, hey, we see you're at this type of store, maybe take some pictures at the shelf, send us this information. Or you can wait until they leave, you know, depending on C-store, gas stations, or grocery stores, you might have different dwell time that makes sense to send them that invitation. Since you know, a grocery store, they'll be there for an hour, gas station, maybe just 5 minutes. Or you could even send them a survey, you know, 4 hours later. In the case of a restaurant, maybe it's the next day, the next week. Depends on the research need and when you might want to deploy the survey. And obviously, we're here talking about mobile. Some of the key things to think about here, this person's on the go. You know, we're catching them at the site, or we know that they're probably going to be on mobile. So we need to keep the survey short. Typically, we're thinking about 10 minutes or less. If we're deploying the survey afterwards, we might go up to 15 minutes, but typically we're using mobile first principles, keeping it short, trying to respect their time. Anytime we can, we try to append core demos off of the panel. We know that it's held on most panels, so we can pull that in instead of asking, you know, race, gender, marital status, and all of that. There's 2 different ways that we've used this type of survey, either within the native app or in I guess our own like dimension-based script held within the kind of the shell of the app. And we find ourselves doing that for different reasons. Typically, if we can go towards the native app, we try to go there because you have better photo capture, media upload type of technology. It's also more accurate as far as the GPS. But in some cases where we have maybe segmentation algorithm or our own proprietary types of questions that we want to include. We find that a web-based survey that's deployed within kind of the shell of the app might work a little bit better. And I don't know if you can read this, but we also think about the different ways that we can use it in 3 different ways. So there's kind of a natural type of intercept, so tracking people and naturally seeing them come across the CVS and deploying a survey. So that's one, kind of true in the moment, real time. There's also mission-based or kind of future-looking. And again, in Canada, I think is a good example of that, where the panels really haven't built up these kind of geolocation panels where people have the app and they're actively being tracked. So instead, we might ask 30,000 panelists to download the app, and then we'll track them or ask them to go to a grocery store and go into the cereal aisle, and we'll catch them there. And then again, historical, so just trying to use the past 6-month data of shopping type of data to be able to append to our tracking studies. So jumping into some of the cases here. So again, I have 4. I could only brand the first. Our client here is TJ Maxx. We do continuous ad tracking and brand equity work with them. And in this case, we really, we wanted to get closer to the moment. I guess there's a few themes that kind of come out of here. The first one here, the standard geolocation survey gets you closer to the moment. So we really just wanted to kind of get closer to their shopping experience to get a better feel for how their shopping experience goes, and does it kind of lead to stronger brand equity for their brand. So we used, I know there's a lot of suppliers here. We've looked at M4, Research Now, SSI, GCS. So we've looked at a lot of the players out there that have capabilities. For a lot of these, we've actually used M4 here, and they do a pretty good job. So again, we geofence TJ Maxx and Kohl's and look for 18 to 44-year-olds, and most of them answered within an hour of their shopping trip. Here's the M4 survey. I know some people have kind of shown their surveys, and again, this is within their app. It's really easy to use. It's very friendly for the mobile respondent. Pretty fluid survey to answer. Again, kind of mobile first principles, just to make sure that they can easily respond. Some of the data from the TJ Maxx study. The first here, TJ Maxx is better at building brand affinity than Kohl's, 75% versus 66%. Likelihood to shop was higher for TJ Maxx versus Kohl's. And then some of the other data. Much more likely at TJ Maxx to actually try on the clothes or shoes than at Kohl's. And then better quality merchandise, exciting bargains, and then more styles that they like. In the bottom right-hand side, I thought it was just kind of interesting. Kohl's shoppers were more likely to use their mobile device to shop for deals. Any thoughts on maybe why? No Kohl's shoppers here? Yeah. I'm on Facebook, you'll see, hey, anybody have a 30% off Kohl's coupon? So I think that's probably what was popping there, is that people are looking for the coupon to use while they're at Kohl's. So that was the first case. The second case, one of our beer clients. We do creative development and brand equity tracking. This application was more around kind of a low incidence type of product rollout, and we really didn't have a great way of getting at that. It was just not likely that we're going to pick up anything associated with that kind of less aware and less purchased SKU that they were rolling out. We actually did a season 1, or in the previous season, we actually tried to measure awareness and usage of their product, and we just didn't see it picking up in our tracking study. So we used location to specifically ask respondents, on site if they noticed the product. And this one I thought was interesting because we actually kind of merged together our core tracking insights. We used iModerate, and we also brought in the geolocation technology, and it really paired nicely to be able to kind of marry all those data sources together. I don't know how well you can see this, but on the left-hand side there, you can see awareness of the new product around 53%. So the left-hand side was kind of your standard, hey, I have my longitudinal tracker tracking awareness and usage of my product. And you can see how the new product compared to the competitors. So it looked like, hey, 53% said they were aware, 8% said it's one of their regular brands. But then in our shopper data, our geolocation data, and also in iModerate, we're seeing some issues come up, like I couldn't find it, I couldn't see it, I wasn't aware of it. There on the top of the map, you can see all the respondents that we interviewed, And then at the bottom was those who actually saw the product, which was a much lower awareness than you might have expected based on the initial data. And it really kind of helped to shine light, and I like that we were able to have the kind of in the moment, mobile pictures like, hey, I couldn't find it on the shelf. You can see how cluttered a shelf at, Kroger or Walmart are. So it was really hard for the brand to kind of cut through the clutter. And then kind of paired with that was the iModerate data at the bottom, which was verbatims around, I've never seen this, it was hard to find it, I couldn't see the product on the shelf. So again, I think for purposes of kind of using this technology, not as a standalone, but instead kind of slotting it in with an overall kind of tracking type of system, it really helped to kind of lift our insights that we were able to get out of our tracker and serve a purpose of bringing in additional insights that maybe we didn't see there. We also kind of saw some of the reasons. So here again, in the moment insights from M4 plus iModerate really kind of helped us to isolate some of the barriers as to why people maybe weren't seeing the brand or maybe weren't buying. So we saw typical stuff like didn't fit occasion, didn't think I'd like the taste of this type of beer. But we also got it down into it was too expensive, didn't come into the pack size I wanted, and it was kind of interesting. Some of the iModerate data said, hey, I'd like to kind of do the trial of one beer. Let me buy one beer because it's kind of a unique set of flavors that was going into this mix. They just wanted to try one bottle and see if they liked it before they bought a 12-pack. A department store here, this application was more, hey, typical panels. We have a sponsorship for one of our clients. They had a campaign going out to college campuses, 5 college campuses. And we went out to the standard panels. Standard panels just said, we have to decline. We can't get these amount of people. And we also just didn't want to go onto the college campuses with kind of traditional type of research or with iPads getting data collection because the expense just gets a little high. So in this case, it actually fit because it was just such a focused geography and focused group of people that it was really helpful to use this technology to be able to get the people at all. I think the Allure folks actually mentioned that for their project. Because we actually had, college campuses, 5 college campuses, 18 to 24-year-olds. We actually went after 600 respondents in a pre-wave and 600 respondents in a post-wave. So it was a big base size, highly focused geography, highly focused demographic in the age range. So it was really kind of tough to find these respondents. But we were able to get there with M4 in this case. I think we've kind of seen some of this through some of the presentations, but we really got a lot of rich insights as far as the verbatims that came through. Again, this was kind of promotion focused on college campuses, just really trying to induce buzz for this specific brand. Some of the respondents saying, I liked how they used Snapchat in their campaign, reaching out to a new demographic, simple design, easy to read, and eye-catching. Promotion used social media, which was kind of effective for this audience. And then we also, on the flip side, had some good negative feedback to the campaign as well. So it was really good to kind of have that trade-off of good, rich verbatims and also kind of to get both sides of the coin that we could use. It was kind of interesting, pre versus post data, awareness consideration, first choice consideration. Really, the campaign didn't have a great direct impact on the brand. But when you looked a little deeper and asked, is this a store where you'd shop for shoes? We did see a positive movement on the bottom line there among those who were maybe didn't previously consider the store one of their go-tos. We had about 40% who said, yeah, the campaign might make me go and buy shoes there in the future. So again, I don't think this data is crazy different from what we might get in traditional online research, but I think that's good, right? Because it's a different methodology, and we're still getting the same types of insights that we want to get from our standard research. CPG manufacturer, this was to measure 2 different deep dive campaigns. One was an ambassador program, so you walk into the store and there's someone who's kind of pushing a certain brand and giving you collateral and coupons for that brand. And the second campaign was actual on-pack coupons, and this was in the beauty aisle, so you might see kind of a hang tag coupon stuck on the bottle. And so M4 again, and the ambassador program, actually we only fielded this one day across 200 stores, and then the on-pack was a little bit longer, 2 months in field across 1,500 stores. And that's something that sometimes when we're designing these things, depending on the audience that we're after, we have to be a little sensitive about the setup, and we might kind of curb our clients to make it more feasible to be able to make it work. These are just kind of some general insights. I'll jump through that. But so the ambassador display, we had about 30% of the people who we contacted either saw the display or saw the rep. And then we had kind of a mix of those who, for the most part, they were positive of the display, they were positive of the rep, thought the rep was friendly. And then of those who actually saw one or the other, it was kind of a mixed bag of whether they thought they would buy the product or not. And then here we saw about 25% noticed the hang tag that was stuck on the product, and only 3% of those who noticed the coupon purchased the product. So really not a great cut through of awareness, and not a great follow through to purchase. But it was kind of interesting to see, those who noticed it, half thought it was eye-catching. A decent chunk said, yeah, motivation is there, but still, it didn't really resonate and come through in purchase. And these are a few situations I thought would just be interesting to lay out there that we haven't sold yet. We haven't pushed these through, haven't fielded these yet, but I thought they were kind of really cool ways that we might use this methodology in the future. The first was a sponsorship measurement. One of our clients came to us and said, hey, we're sponsoring a concert series, about 20 concerts. Can you get people on site to be able to give us reactions to the fact that our brand was sponsoring? What's awareness of our brand? Does it give us brand lift? So we've been looking into that to measure, at individual events. So 15,000 people at a local food festival, or large scale 50,000 or 100,000 people concert. Can we kind of attack those events and get enough people out of that to be able to say what the awareness of the brand was, what the brand lift was for their sponsorship? So that's kind of been a really big focus of this type of methodology. The second is, I think, one of the coolest designs I've ever seen, scariest and coolest, but there's our location-based data where we know where these people are. There's also some kiosks in New York City where we can actually, where with an SDK, we could communicate with the respondent's phone, and we could actually see when specific ads were being shown on billboards on these kiosks, and compare that with some of the geolocation data to be able to kind of create test controls, A/B types of samples, to be able to determine the lift of those respondents who walked past the kiosks and were exposed. So it's kind of scary that there's that much data out there, but it's kind of cool as well that we can do those kind of things to say, hey, you're walking down this street, and we know based on this exposure information for this billboard that you were likely exposed to an ad for a beer company. Last 3 feet, that seems to be kind of a common request, whether it's in the context of people buying washers and dryers. What are they thinking about when they're in the store trading off Whirlpool versus Maytag? Like, what are they thinking about, and how do we kind of get in the minds of the consumers? And then similar to the Kohl's situation, how are people using mobile while they're in the store making that choice? Are they getting on Facebook and asking for opinions from their friends? Are they getting on Consumer Reports? So just kind of foundational research around mobile as part of the purchase decision, kind of the purchase journey, as someone mentioned earlier, and the fact that we have always kind of missed that piece of it. I think we have digital where we can kind of get up to where the point the person jumps in their car and goes to the store, but then it's kind of lost until they actually make the purchase, and then we have data kind of picking up at that point. And outside the U.S., I feel like we have really nice panels, nice resources in U.S. GCS does a decent job in other areas, but I think there is kind of a void for this type of research in Canada and some of the other smaller markets. So we have had some opportunities we've dug into that I think could be there, but I think as the panels continue to push, I think we'll start to see this more and more. I think that's it. I thought for sure I'd run out of time halfway through that.
No, thank you, Brett. Questions real quick for Brett. One thing I was thinking about, Brett, the last 2 examples have been something that we all talk about. Some of us experience, and that's in this kind of tracking or passive data collection space. So I noticed in some of the bullet points you made a comment, at least in your intro, about legals or compliance do's and don'ts. Where do you guys go with that? Do you trust your suppliers to handle those things? Do you research them
Yeah.
yourselves?
I mean, most of the data we collect are coming off of respondents who opted in to be tracked. So I thought about including a slide, but I think as long as that's kind of the starting point, and as long as you're not sharing PII kind of across the lines with your client, that's kind of where we are at CAS or SMR and all that. We try to stay within the realm of that. But I think as long as the respondents have signed on to be tracked, we're okay, right? Because the consent is there. But we got to be careful of that. Yeah, we can't track people, and if they signed on for geo-tracking, we can't also kind of pick up their behavioral information off their device. We have to be careful what we go after.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think very focused and specific, goals and methodologies along with that. There's no reason to get outside the boundaries, but it comes up more often. I don't know a lot of people even know the answer to what can we and can't we do. So just encouraging everyone to have an opinion when it comes to passive data collection on the suppliers and providers that you're trusting and what they're doing with those respondents. And obviously you guys do as well. So thank you, Brett.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
All right.